Order, order. We start with questions to Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, Sir Desmond Swayne.
Number one, sir.
Well done. Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I'll answer questions 1, 11 and 23 together. Bills are too high and the cost of living crisis is the biggest issue facing the country. That's why at the last budget we took decisions to raise taxes on the wealthiest, which will enable us to take an average of £150 of costs of household and energy bills from April. This builds on the fact that the price cap and average energy bills will lower in 2025 in real terms than in 2024.
We were promised
Sir Desmond.
of £300. They've actually gone up by just shy of £200. Yes. And the legislation that we passed last week, the impact assessment states, the emissions trading amendments, we estimate that the cost pass-through for most sectors could feasibly lie at between 80 and 90%. That is a euphemism for even higher bills, isn't it?
Yes. I'm afraid he's wrong on the first point he makes, because he's taking 1 quarter of summer 2024 and comparing it to today. If you look across 2025, bills are lower than in 2024. And actually, I hope, Mr. Speaker, he'd be supporting our £150 off energy bills, but they oppose all the measures that make it possible.
Oh, I've lost Claire Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government's consultation on alternative heating ends today doesn't cover installation costs, yet that is what is stopping many of my constituents in off-gas areas switching away from oil. With National Energy Action warning of an £18 billion funding gap to meet fuel poverty targets, what action will the government take to ensure that those least able to afford alternative forms of heating are not left dependent on fossil fuel and paying sky-high bills?
Well, I think that the honourable lady is right to draw attention to our consultation, and I know from talking to my honourable friend that we will take into account the points that we made. Look, we want to make it possible for as many people as possible across the country to convert to cheap, clean power. That's the point of our Warm Homes Plan. That's the point of the consultation she mentioned.
Aphra Brandreth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A recent survey conducted by Census Wide shows that 2/3 of households with heat pumps say their heating costs have increased, driven by electricity prices that are 4 times higher than gas. With, as we've heard, energy bills now £190 higher, despite this government promising to cut them by £300, does the Secretary of State acknowledge that his choices are making it harder for households to make the switch to greener heating options, and unlike the Conservatives' cheap power plan, are leaving households with higher bills?
Can I congratulate her on reading out the whip's handout? A question. Let me just say to her, no, I do not, and I'll tell her why. Because the action that the Chancellor took in the budget to take the renewables obligation off bills and onto public expenditure was the biggest single cut in the cost of electricity we've seen, actually, even dating back to their time in office.
Select Committee, Bill Esterson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The costs of new infrastructure are a pressure on bills, as the Secretary of State knows. He deserves enormous credit for the results of auction round 7 today, where renewables, the strike price of renewables is less than half that of what it would be with new gas. But what is the approach to rolling out extra grid and indeed maintaining the existing grid, so crucial to the plans, given there is so much to be made up for following the failure to invest over many years since privatisation?
Well, he's right to draw attention to the auction this morning. Record amounts of solar power, the cheapest form of power we could possibly have in this country, less than half the price to build and operate new gas. And on the point about infrastructure, he's right. We inherited a terrible legacy. We are building the new infrastructure we need.
Amanda Hack.
My constituents of North West Leicestershire will soon be benefiting from an average of £150 per household to cut bills, as well as a number being able to access energy efficiency schemes. Could the Minister outline in more detail the changes expected to fixed elements of our bill, such as the standing charges, which impact those in fuel poverty so much more than the rest of us?
My honourable friend draws attention to a really important issue, which is standing charges, and we currently have been consulting on moving the warm homes discount from fixed cost standing charges to unit rates. It's been welcomed by Martin Lewis, among others. We do want to bear down on standing charges, and obviously we'll be announcing the results of that consultation soon.
Catherine Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, I teamed up with the local Labour Council Cabinet Member for the Cost of Living and the MP for Derby South to launch a free local pension advice service, which has delivered over £500,000 to eligible pensioners in Derby. It's helped with pension credit, home heating tips, fire safety advice and utility deals, and has even provided free draft extruders and radiator insulators. What steps is the Secretary taking to ensure that people know about the support they can get to reduce household bills?
Well, my honourable friend, is really important to draw attention to this, and as part of our Warm Homes plan, we're going to be setting up a Warm Homes agency precisely to give people proper information, advice and guidance on what they can do to cut their bills. The biggest public investment we've ever seen in this country to help people cut bills and upgrade their homes, and we will make sure people know about it.
Good job.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'll answer questions 2, 10 and 18 together. We recognise that high energy costs remain a significant pressure on UK businesses. We're acting now through the British Industry Supercharger and the new British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme to reduce electricity costs for energy-intensive sectors while delivering our Clean Power 2030 mission to cut bills for good. We also intend to consult on further options to reduce costs and make low-carbon heat economically competitive.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amatec and Triple S Gears are two quite rare breeds. They're manufacturing companies in my Spelthorne constituency inside the M25. One employs 200 people, the other employs 43, and they seek to export around the world. How does the Minister expect those companies to be competitive on a global market when energy prices in Ashford, Middlesex are 4 times higher than those in Ashford, Alabama?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So it's exactly the disparity in international energy prices for industry that the previous Conservative government left us with, and that we're taking up with our Clean Power 2030 mission. But we recognise that as clean power is coming online, industry will need further support. And both Amatec and Triple S Gears are exactly the sort of manufacturing businesses that this government wishes to support through initiatives such as our British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme. The consultation for that is just closed. I do hope both of those businesses respond to that consultation, and we'll be publishing the results shortly.
Don't tell Pinkerton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have small businesses and large in my constituency of Surrey, Heath, everyone from small cafes to care providers to large manufacturers who tell me that they are being crushed by high energy costs. Given the wholesale cost of gas has fallen substantially since its peak in 2022, can the Minister indicate to us what proportion of a typical business energy bill is driven by either wholesale costs, network charges or policy costs? And which one of those is likely to be borne down on over the next year as a direct consequence of government action?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So he's quite right to point out the impact on small businesses of energy costs. And as we've seen, they've been largely driven over many years by the linking between energy costs and gas prices, something that this government is determined to deal with as we pile on renewable energy as part of our clean power mission. In terms of gas costs specifically, UK gas costs, after policy costs are included, are competitive with Europe. But of course, what we want to do is remove businesses from having to rely on the whims of the fossil fuel market and be able to rely on low-cost, secure, homegrown energy.
Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A third-generation advanced manufacturing in my constituency of Guildford invested in solar-covered, energy-efficient factory to cut emissions and expand. Yet overall operating costs have risen sharply, including business rates increasing from $130,000 to $570,000. This business is doing everything right, switching to renewables, working to become more efficient, on top of crippling hike in business rates. The straw that breaks the camel's back is the energy costs. So what discussions has the Secretary of State had with the Chancellor about reducing industrial energy and associated costs so that firms investing in clean growth are properly supported?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, it's absolutely central to the government's policy that businesses are incentivised to invest in renewable energy and electrification where that's possible, so that they can access the lower cost electrical energy that is coming on stream as part of our 2030 power mission. She mentioned that the business was a manufacturing business. It is possible that they could qualify for our British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme, which we're bringing forward in 2027, and the results of the consultation of which will be published shortly.
Jenka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Cornwall, after our groundbreaking critical mineral strategy, there is the possibility that Flow Renewables could maybe power critical minerals processing plants. This is a fantastic opportunity. Would the Minister look closely at these proposals and see how the Department could help something like this to happen?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend does a grand job of championing both the critical minerals industry in Cornwall and the potential for floating offshore wind in her own constituency. And of course, she highlights a great opportunity where investment in both energy and industry side by side can reduce the cost of capital for both parts of the supply chain and so create an economic opportunity. I'd like to thank her for the representations that she's made on behalf of her constituents to me prior to today, and of course I'll continue to work with her on trying to realise this opportunity.
Jürgen Steinbeck.
Mr. Speaker, to transition away from fossil fuels, we need zero-emissions vehicles on the road. Manufacturers such as Alexander Dennis should be leading that transition, although they currently operate with a gas-intensive production process, and to stay competitive against imports need greater support. The BIC scheme is hugely welcome for reducing industrial electricity costs, but would the Minister consider supporting a dual fuel discount which includes the cost of gas to support automotive advanced manufacturing sectors such as Alexander Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am, of course, very concerned about those industries that are gas intensive. And what the government's policy is intended to do is to ensure that where it is possible for those industries to decarbonise by electrifying, that they're given the support to do so, both through the confidence in long-term energy prices, through the delivery of our clean power mission, but also through the support to invest in their business.
Richard Quidley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the Department are working hard with the DFT to decarbonise shipping, but the current system works against businesses. One of our ferry companies is in the position where they have to pay £12 million up front for a shoreside connection and wait for up to 7 years. Will the Minister commit to reviewing this system to speed up electric shipping for places like the Isle of Wight?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm extremely grateful for the work of my honourable friend in engaging with me on this topic. In advance of the recent changes to the emissions trading scheme to include maritime emissions. It's incredibly important that domestic maritime emissions are included, of course, to incentivise the investment that's required to decarbonise. I am aware of the issue in the Isle of Wight that on one route there are 2 vessels that will be affected by that. I know that he's invited me to visit the Isle of Wight and to meet with the businesses concerned himself, and I'm allowed to make the commitment from the dispatch box that I will indeed do that.
Yeah, Graham Ledbetter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Businesses in public services in the north of Scotland pay amongst the highest commercial energy prices in the whole of the UK. The government's had 18 months to try and fix this. Why do they still think it's okay to discriminate against people in the north of Scotland in that way?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the government is taking an approach across the whole of the United Kingdom to deliver the energy infrastructure and energy generation capacity to guarantee low-cost, homegrown, secure energy for the future, and ensuring that the jobs and the benefits of that are seen across the country. And I would have thought he might wish to welcome those jobs. 20,000 jobs in Scotland, by 2030 additional jobs in clean energy industries in his community and mine.
Neil Griffith.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, time and time again, small manufacturing firms in my constituency of Llanelli tell me that high energy costs are making it difficult for them to be competitive, and they really feel they're on the edge. So given the lack of investment by the previous Conservative government and the fact that this government is now playing catch-up, when does the Minister think that enough new sources of energy will be generated to actually bring down prices, and how soon will interim help arrive?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend for Llanelli is quite right to champion the small manufacturers in her constituency, which I know well from the time that I've spent working in South Wales. What is important to note, Mr. Speaker, is of course the announcement from my honourable friend, the Secretary of State, this morning, which will shortly be the result of a ministerial statement in the House about allocation round 7, demonstrates our commitment to putting on new solar farms, new onshore wind, new offshore wind. Every single one of those installations contributes to our energy security and reducing the cost of energy for domestic consumers and industry alike.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Pippa Haring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the cost of electricity is still too high, and as we've heard, businesses are struggling to pay their energy bills. And while the government has offered help to the energy intensive industries, it is the small and medium-sized businesses in my constituency and around the country that are still feeling overlooked and forgotten. Liberal Democrat researchers estimated that 3.1 million SMEs saw a total bill increase of 7.6 billion when the former Conservative government ended the energy bill relief scheme. So when will this government finally help SMEs, the small businesses, the backbone of our economy, to really see off their crippling energy bills?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So she and I agree that more needs to be done to alleviate the high energy costs on small businesses. I used to run an energy-intensive small business myself, and I do know how difficult that is. She's also right to point out that this is the legacy that the previous government left us with. We are pushing forward to 2030, obviously, where we will have lower energy costs and more secure energy in the UK. But we do recognise that more needs to be done to support small business, and we are providing measures right now that are helping, including our zero carbon services hospitality trial, which is now delivering support for 600 hospitality SMEs across the UK, and £200,000 to fund improvements in the UK Business Climate Hub to help SMEs with their carbon emissions as well. So we are providing support right now, but I do recognise there is more that needs to be done.
Miller.
Question number 3, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we set out in the solar roadmap, government considers effective community engagement as crucial as we scale up solar deployment across the country. Developers must consider local community views as part of their applications, and the quality of that community engagement is taken into account by decision makers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just across the border of my constituency lies Southall Solar, a scheme that works with the local community, pays a direct return to residents, funds local projects, and has even won awards for its landscape and environmental design. By contrast, Botley West, one of the largest solar farms ever brought forward in Europe, would have a profound and long-lasting impact on a rural area. Yet local people feel a level of developer engagement and transparency and the community benefit on offer falls far short of the scale of that impact, and the Planning Inspectorate recently described the absence of key information as, I quote, very disappointing. So does the Minister agree with me that community benefits should be proportionate to the scale and impact of solar development? And will he agree to meet with me to discuss how large-scale solar schemes can listen better to rural communities so that clean energy is delivered with, not against, local consent?
Well, I have had many productive meetings with the honourable gentleman. I'm very happy to meet with him again to talk about these issues. Just to set out, first of all, that the government absolutely believes that communities that host infrastructure should benefit from that. We consulted on mandatory community benefits. We will respond to that consultation in due course. But today we've also published the Local Power Plan, the biggest shift in power and wealth we've seen in the energy space in British history, to make sure that communities like his, but right across the country, benefit from being able to own their own energy infrastructure, and for the benefits of that to flow into those communities. That's the ambition that we've set out as a government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A solar farm is planned for my constituency, and the developer has engaged well with local residents. And yes, it will power 20,000 homes. Yes, it will get carbon emissions down. But most importantly, it will make our bills more affordable, because solar is 50% cheaper than natural gas. So does the Minister believe that members across this House should say, as I say today, when it comes to renewable energy, yes in my constituency and yes in my backyard?
Well, I warmly welcome my honourable friend, perhaps unsurprisingly, in his comments today, because he takes seriously the issue of how we build the infrastructure this country needs for our energy security. But he also rightly points out what the benches opposite seem to completely ignore, that renewables are the cheapest and quickest form of power to get onto the system. And just today, the new auction has resulted in 4.9 gigawatts, taken together with offshore wind, the most successful renewables auction in British history. The entire front bench opposite used to agree with that. 50% cheaper than the new build gas that the Shadow Secretary of State now champions, that will put money on people's bills right across the country. It's the right plan for bringing down bills, for energy security and for jobs across the country.
Greg Smith, Conservative Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think the Minister fully appreciates just how much communities threatened by large-scale solar up and down this country feel that they are having things done to them and not with them. The number one complaint that I have heard from campaign groups represented by Stop Oversized Solar up and down the land, including in my own constituency, is the threat to food security. When they try and engage, they keep being told this bogus figure of 1%. But by 2035, if we carry on as this government is going, an area the size of Greater London will be covered in solar. That's the equivalent to nearly 2,000 farms capable of producing 2 billion loaves of bread. When are we going to get the truth about the threat to food security from solar?
I mean, this is just the most absurd nonsense from the party opposite, who I see are now crowdsourcing their energy policy on Twitter, and it's not surprising we come up with that sort of nonsense when that's the information that they use. All the statistics point that even in the absolute most ambitious deployment scenarios, 0.4% of UK land would be occupied by solar. They come to this House time and time again and call for bringing down bills, but their policy is the exact same thing that would put up bills, would turn away from the investment that is driving jobs and opportunities across the country. They had no answers on energy policy for 14 years, and they've learned absolutely nothing in opposition.
Maguire.
Question for Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is absolutely committed to supporting the NHS being at the heart of our decarbonisation effort in order that A, they get to reduce their emissions, but B, that they allow them to reduce their dependence on expensive fossil fuels. That is why Great British Energy has already supported over 260 NHS sites with up to £130 million of funding. For GPs that aren't part of NHS sites, they can access the boiler upgrade scheme, accessing £7,500 towards a heat pump and £5,000 towards a biomass boiler.
Hello, Maguire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Primary care accounts for around 25% of the NHS carbon emissions, with many GPs working in ageing, inefficient buildings with high running costs. Research from the Royal College of GPs reveals that since May 2022, only 5 GP practices in England and Wales have accessed the boiler upgrade grant scheme, and most are unable to access the public sector decarbonisation scheme. GP partners across the UK identify lack of capital funding as the main barrier to decarbonisation, yet 260 NHS trusts are rightly receiving government funding for new solar panels. So will the Minister meet with me and the Royal College of GPs to discuss how GPs can access decarbonisation schemes and expand GP Energy's investment model to GPs?
I thank the member for raising this really important issue. I think you'd agree, and thanks for raising those figures again, that we are having an ambitious plan, and what's come out today in terms of the local power plan may well meet some of the needs that she raises. I will take it away and have a look at it. We do recognise that retrofitting commercial buildings can be costly and complex, and we're looking at other levers to do that, whether it's around accessing private finance, including exploring novel options such as property-linked finance. But I think the announcement today will help, and I'm very happy to discuss it further with her.
Mr. Strapper.
Mr. Speaker, it was fantastic to see GB Energy invest in new, clean, bill-saving technology for Bedford Road Health Centre in my constituency last week, coming on top of investments already seen at the Leicester Hospital and Bedford Hospital serving my constituency. It's good for the NHS and it's good for the planet. So how can we get it onto more public sector rooftops right across the country? And crucially, I've got some fantastic examples in Hitchin who would love to see further action.
I thank the member, and I applaud him for all of his ambition and championing of the opportunities that are presented in our low-carbon transition plan. I think the announcement today in the local power plan is a real opportunity to turn the dial on this, for local communities to become involved and to make the best of those benefits of the low-carbon transition. I look forward to working with him further on it.
Sir Aldy.
5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The carbon pricing in the emissions trading scheme is set by the market rather than by government, and the price is effective at driving investment in carbon abatement measures, but it is for individual operators to decide whether the costs of abatement in a project are effective for them.
Sir Aldy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the government updated its carbon values to reflect its latest net zero emission target, but the UK emissions trading scheme does not take into account these updated figures. So in 2021, it was predicted that carbon abatement costs for a third runway at Heathrow would cost £100 million, and costs will have only risen since. And according to the emissions trading scheme, just 15% of the clean-up costs of expansion will be covered by Heathrow. The rest will fall on the taxpayer. So will the Minister update the UK emissions trading scheme to reflect the carbon abatement costs of major projects, such as Heathrow expansion, so that the taxpayer can understand how much they will have to pay for a third runway?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government doesn't comment on or interfere with the carbon price. Ultimately, the price is set by the market to ensure that the ETS drives decarbonisation where it is cheapest. In this way, it can act most effectively as a financial incentive to decarbonise without specifying the particular technology.
For Coutinho, Shadow Secretary of State.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's great to see you back on your feet. Last week, the Labour Party voted to increase the carbon tax, a tax which increases costs for households and industry. It's already doubled because of their policies. I think it's absolutely shameful for the government to say that they've had no impact on the carbon tax whatsoever. It's now over 10% of a household electricity bill, and the rise is an effective £5 billion tax a year on the British economy. So can the Minister explain why the Labour Party wants to tax our industrial jobs out of existence, leaving Britain reliant on dirtier imports from abroad?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure if the Shadow Minister is conflating the various carbon taxes with the emissions trading scheme, but to be clear, the government does not set or comment on the value of the carbon set in the emissions trading scheme. That is a matter for the market, and of course that's a policy that the previous government were very keen on, because it drives the most efficient forms of decarbonisation. Ultimately, it places a price on carbon emissions, and a price that ensures that private capital floods into the right place to decarbonise, as we have seen so successfully with the power sector in the UK.
Question number 6, please.
Seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is huge potential from small modular reactors, both for our energy security and for jobs. I'm proud the decisions that this government has taken have enabled us to fund the UK's first SMRs at Wilver, supporting up to 3,000 jobs on site and thousands more across the supply chain. We want every part of the country to benefit from this potential, including Scotland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. An SMR at new nuclear at Hunterston Power Station would make a huge difference to my constituency, given that there are already nearly 650 people employed in highly skilled and well-paid jobs in the civil nuclear sector there. I was concerned to read a BBC article about a Scottish nuclear worker who relocated from Hunterston to Hinckley as there is no new nuclear in Scotland. Would the Secretary of State agree with me that we are losing talent and investment from the SNP's continuous opposition to nuclear?
My honourable friend speaks incredibly well on this issue. It's just common sense to have nuclear as part of our energy mix. We know why it's not going to happen in Scotland under the current regime, because the SNP, for dogmatic reasons, have set their face against it. They're even embarrassed to have this policy. The answer to it is to vote Labour in May.
Minister Desmond. Jim, you weren't here. You've just appeared. I think you missed the first part of the question. That was the problem. You're still coming back. Come, just get on with it. Don't worry, Jim.
It is unusual, though.
Can I thank the Minister for that? Minister, you'll understand that I know the Minister is interested in small modular schemes, and we're very interested in having them in Northern Ireland. The Shadow Minister has also given a commitment to that. Can I ask the Minister, please, what discussion we had with the Northern Ireland Assembly, Gordon Lyons in particular, to ensure that we can also benefit? Thank you.
Well, obviously this is devolved to the Northern Ireland Assembly and Executive, but I think the Honourable Gentleman makes a really, really important point. Throughout the United Kingdom, there is huge potential around SMRs. This is the technology of the future. It can play a really important role in our energy mix across the UK.
Shadow Minister Andrew.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's unusual, indeed unheard of, in recent months anyway, for the Secretary of State and I to agree on anything on energy policy. However, it's probably not the first time this week he secretly agrees with a Scottish politician. However, I know he agrees that new nuclear, in particular SMRs, offer huge potential for the UK and for Scotland. This week, trade unionists for safe nuclear energy launched a petition addressed to the First Minister of Scotland, calling on him to lift the ban on new nuclear development in Scotland. Can they expect his department's support?
Well, the Honourable Gentleman is right about this, and I think, given the let me put it this way: given the scale of the climate change challenge, only those who are dug in a dogmatic way can oppose new nuclear. Given the scale of the challenge that we face, we need all of the tools at our disposal. Provides good jobs, provides energy security, so it's only for dogmatic reasons they can oppose it. There is one difference between him and me, which is he promised SMRs, we're delivering them.
The difference, Mr. Speaker, is that the ambition when it comes to nuclear pales in comparison to our ambition when we were a government with this Secretary of State and his ambition. When I served as the Minister for Nuclear, it was the source of greatest frustration that the many, countless, indeed huge strides that we took to kickstart the new nuclear age in the UK, none of the investments or the jobs would be seen north of the border. Now, the Scottish National Party is most at home refighting the battles of the past. It does tend to be the battles of the 14th century. But in this age of a nuclear revolution across the world, the aversion to nuclear is inexplicable. It is a Luddite approach. The SNP is anti-science, anti-progress and anti-jobs. There can and should be a future for nuclear in Scotland. So does the Secretary of State not agree that this is the time for the Scottish National Party government to move Scotland, to drag themselves into the 20th, let alone 21st century, and change course and lift this ridiculous ban?
He makes his point in his own way, I do believe, as I say, that the SNP's position makes no sense. I do just gently point out to the honourable gentleman, though, he might have had grand ambitions, but no delivery with grand ambitions is completely worthless, and that was their record on nuclear.
We're under just.
Question number 7, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. GB Energy's mission is to power Britain with clean, secure and homegrown energy. They've already started that work, with GB Energy and the Government funding around 250 school and 260 hospital solar installations, including at Rakesgate Primary School and Ormiston New Academy in my honourable friend's constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my constituency of Wolverhampton West, almost 1 in 5 households have been living in fuel poverty, struggling to heat their homes this winter. So I do welcome the Government's commitment to lifting 1 million more households out of fuel poverty by 2030, which will have a significant impact on my constituents. But can the Minister please outline what other tangible changes my constituents can expect to see over the next year, thanks to GB Energy, so by the time we come to next winter, they can feel comfortable that they can now afford to heat their homes?
I thank my honourable friend for that question. I know he is focused, like I am, on reducing energy bills for his constituents and people across the country. I've already spoken about the extensive investment, not just in his constituency, but across the country in solar, and people in Wolverhampton and across the country will also be benefiting from our action to reduce energy costs by an average of £150 this April, and that's in addition to continuing the warm home discount for nearly 6 million eligible households this year.
Mr. Speaker, there have been numerous references to the cost of energy and the reducing cost of it in the United Kingdom. Has any assessment been made by the Minister or the Department of the comments by the International Energy Agency in the past few days that seems to indicate we have one of the highest prices in the Western world?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think where myself and the International Energy Agency would agree is that we need to get off of this roller coaster of fossil fuels and make sure that we are investing in clean, homegrown energy that people across the country can take advantage of to lower their bills.
Number 8, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As set out in the recent Northern Growth Strategy, the North East is at the forefront of our clean energy revolution. Our industrial strategy's Clean Energy Industry Sector Plan sets out measures which will support investment and growth across the UK. And GB Energy has supported grants to mayoral strategic authorities which will enable locally led energy projects.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that response. So for 100 years and more, skilled workers in the North East have relied on high-paid energy jobs, be it in coal, gas or oil, in mines, on factories, in ports and on rigs. Labour's clean power mission can bring new jobs to existing supply chains, but companies and workers need help to transitions. So will the Minister tell me how she plans to future-proof the North East energy supply chain and deliver secure, well-paid and unionised jobs?
My honourable friend is absolutely correct to highlight the huge opportunities there are for the North East in the energy transition. We are estimating an additional 10,000 jobs by 2030, building on those that are already in place in offshore wind, in the Port of Tyne and in nuclear Hartlepool. She's right to point out the importance of that transition for both existing workers and for the next generation. That's why we've introduced a Clean Energy Jobs Plan to make sure that transition is as successful as possible. I'd like to also highlight the work of Mayor Kim McGuinness, who held an excellent Green Jobs Fair in the North East, which has provided a blueprint for the rest of the country, and highlight the importance of our work hand in hand with the trade unions to make sure that we deliver the most effective transition possible.
Miracle Defoe.
Question number 9.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Great Britain's electricity distribution network is highly resilient, and the Government works closely with industry to maintain this. Energy resilience is a top priority for the Government, which is why my department will publish an energy resilience plan in 2026.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Constituents in areas like Ashwin, Whitton, Gilbert, Brandon and Waterhouses, and increasingly businesses in Durham City regularly contact me about recurring power outages. They've been told by Northern Power Grid that temporary repairs will be made, but clearly that offers no reassurance to those who are elderly, live alone, rely on their electricity supply for medication or power medical equipment. And recent storms can't be blamed, as many of these outages were reported in spells of fine weather. Can the Minister tell me what work the Government is carrying out to improve the resilience of the electricity distribution network in Durham, so that my constituents aren't constantly worried about when the power will next go out?
Well, my honourable friend asked a really important question, and obviously I completely understand the frustrations of people who are without power and the disruption that it has to people's lives. My department has had a number of conversations with Northern Power Grid on the particular issues in my honourable friend's constituency, and I'm advised that across Waterhouses, Brandon and Eschwinning, many of these were caused by trees contacting overhead lines. Clearly, all of this is feeding into work that's been taken around making sure that the resilience of the network avoids those situations in the future. But we're also working around how we can upgrade the network where possible to make sure it is resilient. There's obviously always more we can do, but across the country, the grid does remain hugely resilient, and we work to support communities like ours where there are, unfortunately, power outages.
Farrell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Two things that the Government could do to improve energy resilience, particularly in communities like mine in Cumbria. Thing one would be to support Electricity North West, making sure that they bury their cables where they can to protect them against wild weather, which we have from time to time, as he knows. And the second thing is to accelerate local energy markets, so that places like Coniston, we discussed in our meeting yesterday, are able to provide energy for the community they're embedded within, and therefore be able to enhance the resilience of the network. Will he do those things?
Well, I thank the right honourable gentleman. First of all, I think Northern Power Grid is looking at exactly that question about where some of the lines can be buried to try and avoid repetition of the issues that have been caused so far, but I'll follow up that point in particular with them. I had a fantastic meeting with him yesterday to talk about Coniston and around local energy markets, and I would encourage him and members across the House to read the local power plan published this morning, which sets out our ambition in this space to look at innovative ways communities can own their own energy, invest in their own energy, but also have the resilience of local energy networks and smart energy systems that help the grid nationally, but also help local communities.
Dave Dougal.
Number 12, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This Government's actions mean lower bills for people across Scotland and lower levels of fuel poverty. In April, because of the Government's actions, households across Scotland will see an average of £150 of costs removed from their energy bills. And just last week, we announced the extension of the Warm Home Discount to 2031, meaning £92 million of support for some of the most vulnerable people across Scotland every year right into the next decade.
The energy market in Scotland operates in surplus in both generation and in transmission, whereas the energy market in England operates in shortage in both generation and transmission. Unfortunately, that means that a GB energy market, Scotland gets sucked into subsidising energy costs for English consumers. Over and above that, the UK Energy have made it clear that there will be no reduction in energy bills meaningfully until some indeterminate point in the 2030s. So will the Minister, just before the Scottish election, recommit to energy bills in Scotland being £300 lower in 2029 than they were in 2024?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bills are coming down, and yes, I will recommit to that. And if the honourable gentleman doesn't want to listen to me about the impact of our policies, he may look at the Scottish Government's own modelling of the £150 off of energy, which says that the number of people in fuel poverty in Scotland will reduce by 9%, and the numbers in extreme fuel poverty will reduce by 12.5% this April because of this government's action, not because of anything he or his colleagues are doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to see you walking in today. I welcome the publication of the local power plan. It will be keenly read in Minor Hill and Yare constituency, the heart of the Atlantic, where communities are taking their share in the wealth of wind. But to renew and expand community energy, we need to get connections to the grid. I welcome what the local power plan has to say about setting up tailored support for communities, but I would say there has to be priority support from Ofgem, from the grid operators and from this government to make sure that communities benefit from the wealth of wind.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know my honourable friend is a real champion for local community power in the Healing and Yare, and I know my honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, will be visiting soon, and I'm sure will have lots to say on his visit to the Western Isles.
Sir Mark Hendry.
Number 13, Mr. Speaker.
First of a kind, Mr. Speaker, the first of a kind clean industry bonus as part of AR7 is set to crowd in up to £3.4 billion of private investment in supply chains and support up to 7,000 jobs across the country. After a legacy of failure under the last government, we're determined the clean energy future is made in Britain.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what steps is the Secretary of State taking to ensure that jobs generated through the clean industry bonus are directed towards communities formerly dependent on fossil fuel industries, and that workers at risk of displacement during the transition are supported into these new opportunities?
Well, my honourable friend makes a really important point, and one of the great things about the clean industry bonus is it is going to be focused on the industrial areas of our country, including those that are based in oil and gas. Too. We also have, as part of our North Sea Future plan, a whole set of plans to help workers who have been displaced from oil and gas into these areas. There's huge potential in this, and it is this innovation, Mr. Speaker, of actually rewarding companies that invest in our country.
Number 14, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the best ways to ensure accurate billing is by using a smart meter. Smart meters enable accurate billing by automatically recording energy use in every half-hour period, allowing bills based on actual rather than estimated usage. This is why over 2/3 of non-domestic premises are already using a smart meter.
That settles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small businesses across my Stourbridge constituency have been mis-sold commercial energy contracts by brokers. A business in Lye were recently locked into a 3-year contract where they found themselves paying more than double the market rate, and an independent cafe in the Merry Hill Centre recently had to close due to the £1,500 a month in energy bills they were forced to pay. Will the government strengthen the law to protect small businesses against unscrupulous energy brokers and consider introducing a cap on business tariffs?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for that question. I'm sorry to hear about the experience of businesses in her constituency. The short answer to her question is yes, we will strengthen the law in this area. Rogue energy brokers have been allowed to use predatory sales tactics for too long to take advantage of customers, and that's why we're introducing new measures to stamp out this exploitation, and we'll introduce them once parliamentary time allows.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 4th of February, the Government published the Advanced Nuclear Framework, which establishes a pathway to market by introducing the UK Advanced Nuclear Pipeline and clarifying the enabling policy landscape to unlock privately financed advanced nuclear projects in the UK, which is all part of our new golden age of nuclear power.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I congratulate my honourable friend on the publication of the Advanced Nuclear Framework? It is an important step forward, providing a clear pathway for credible projects such as the one that X-Energy and Centrica are delivering in my constituency of Hartlepool. Will he ensure, though, that the right balance is struck between backing those projects that are most robust and mature, while also recognising that government support will be particularly important to unlocking private investment for the first project of its kind in the UK, which will make Hartlepool a trailblazer for our country?
Well, can I firstly pay tribute to my honourable friend, who is an absolute champion for Hartlepool, and I was delighted to be at an event recently as part of Nuclear Week in Parliament, where I met some of his constituents who I think pay tribute to him for the work that he does in this place and outside it to bring nuclear investment to Hartlepool. The framework that we've announced enables credible, mature, privately led projects by providing the clarity needed to attract the private capital. And of course, to join the UK Advanced Nuclear Pipeline, projects have to meet the readiness assessments, gaining in principle the endorsement of deliverability. So his point is hugely important, and we look forward to these private-led projects coming forward as part of this huge investment in new nuclear.
Please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud that the government's extended the warm home discount to an extra 2.7 million households, taking the total to around 6 million. Last week we announced that the scheme would continue supporting households for a further 5 years to 2031, and this will make a vital difference to so many families this winter, including an additional 190,000 households in Yorkshire and the Humber.
Mr. Speaker, I'll never forget my mum renting a house in York with ancient heating, freezing rooms and an evil prepayment meter that drained her finances. And in York, over a third of fuel poor households rent privately. So what is the Secretary of State doing to ensure that the warm home discount reaches them and ends the unfair penalty simply for renting?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, the experience my honourable friend outlines is still all too common in our country, and I know that he's raising this and continues to raise this on behalf of all of his constituents. The warm home discount is available to eligible private renting households on prepayment meters, and also through the Warm Homes Plan we are taking significant action to increase the minimum energy efficiency standards for the private rental sector, so that every private renter in his constituency and elsewhere benefits from a warm home that is cheaper to heat.
17, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government takes energy security extremely seriously. We run one of the world's safest, most reliable energy systems and a top destination for investment. Investment in our energy infrastructure undergoes the highest levels of national security scrutiny.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given reports from Norway and Denmark that Chinese-manufactured electric buses contain remote kill switch technology, and that the recent UK-China engagement appears to have delivered an embassy for the Chinese and little more than a labubu for the United Kingdom, how can the Minister be confident that Chinese-made energy infrastructure does not pose similar national security risks? And what steps is she taking to remove our reliance on Chinese-made infrastructure?
Yeah, it's slightly audacious, Mr. Speaker, to come into this energy system that when we left government in 2010, I think we had three of the top solar companies in the world. When we came back into office, we had nothing. There was no supply chain. So it is slightly audacious. But for this government, national security is our #1 and overriding priority. We are engaging constructively with every opportunity and with all actors, but at the same time, we make sure that every single decision takes into account our national security, and that will come first above anything else.
As Mr. Speaker, domestic production of clean energy infrastructure technologies insulates us from Chinese security issues. In Cornwall, we're on the cusp of a significant geothermal baseload energy production. Geothermal Engineering Limited in my constituency is imminently opening the UK's first ever geothermal electricity plant, producing energy and lithium from beneath our feet. Can the Minister ensure that there will be ministerial representation at this key milestone in the UK's clean energy transition?
From China to Cornwall. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And there we go. There we go. I thank him for his continued championing of Cornwall, of geothermal, and of other critical minerals. This government supports geothermal, and we will ensure we engage constructively at any key moments.
Topicals, Olivia Blake.
Topical question 1, please.
Stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning we've announced a record-breaking auction for solar and onshore wind, and we're launching our local power plan. This follows a month in which we've secured the biggest offshore wind auction in Europe's history and launched our Warm Homes plan. We're determined to deliver lower bills and good jobs as we take back control of Britain's energy.
Olivia Blake.
I welcome the Secretary of State's leadership in restoring momentum on net zero. Will he outline how the government's energy and climate strategies will be underpinned by clear delivery plans, milestones
and transparent reporting to Parliament.
Well, as my honourable friend knows, and she speaks with great eloquence on these issues, that is the great thing about the Climate Change Act of 2008, passed with all-party support. David Cameron, my nemesis, was a great supporter of that plan, and that gives us those milestones that she's talking about. On top of that, we have our Clean Power Action Plan as well.
So, Secretary of State, Claire Coutinho.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, the Secretary of State signed a secret energy deal with China, which he has refused to publish. This is simply unheard of. We've heard repeatedly from intelligence services that China might seek to disrupt our energy system, so it is crucially important the public get to see what he has signed us up to. So will the Secretary of State commit to publishing the full text of his secret energy deal with China? And if not, can he tell the House what it is he's trying to hide?
Piece of advice: wacky conspiracy theories that she gets on the internet are no substitute for a proper policy.
Claire Coutinho.
Mr. Speaker, it's frankly another patronising non-answer from the Secretary of State. I'm not sure he got the memo, but his party is fed up with the Sexist Boys Club. And what is crucially important is that the public have lost faith in the Labour Party. This is a serious moment. So does he accept that when he stands at that dispatch box and tells the public that by his calculation their bills are falling, not rising, they simply don't believe him? And does he accept that when he does not set out what any of his plans will do to bills, like doubling the carbon tax or Clean Power 2030, he makes a mockery of his party's pretence that they care about the cost of living? And does he not reflect on all of this, the £300 nonsense pledge, the GBE fig leaf, and realise that when it comes to loss of trust, he is not their salvation, he is their problem?
Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lectures from the Right Honourable Lady on the cost of living crisis, because they presided over the worst cost of living crisis in generations. And let me tell her what we're doing. £150 off bills, the Warm Homes discount extended, the Warm Homes plan. We've done more in 18 months to cut bills for people than they did in 14 years.
Mr. Speaker, ExxonMobil have just closed the most modern ethylene plant. ExxonMobil also paid out £17 billion in shareholder dividends. Scottish workers betrayed for corporate greed. Does the Secretary of State agree that we need government ownership in vital industries, because private capital will always just look after shareholder interests and not those of workers, communities and national prosperity?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend does a good job standing up for workers in his constituency, and he will know very well the views of the government on this closure following the statement that I made in the House before Christmas. I was pleased to recently attend the task force locally, along with my honourable friend, the member for Cowdenbeath and Kirkcaldy, and along with the investment that the government is making in Grangemouth and the guarantee for an interview for workers from Westmoreland at Grangemouth as well. Our focus is on supporting the workers and the local community. A significant investment by government in the local area that stands in stark contrast to the SNP Scottish Government that have limited their support to £3 million a year.
Pippa Hurley, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trump's national security report made clear that he wants to use America's gas to project geopolitical power. We must not replace Putin's gas with the reliance on Trump's gas. And that's why signing the Hamburg Declaration was a step in the right direction, strengthening energy cooperation with our European neighbours. So we need to go further, and we should host the next North Sea Summit, demonstrating UK leadership. So has the Secretary of State managed to get the Treasury to see sense and agree to host the next summit?
Not yet, but the honourable lady makes a really important point, which is energy security from homegrown clean energy is important here, but also we should work with our European allies.
Steve Witherden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituency is home to Bersham Colliery, the final coal mine to close in the whole of North Wales. And coal tip safety is paramount to Welsh communities, but there's a concern about companies extracting coal from our 2,590 tips for commercial gain. With the Senedd elections less than 3 months away, if the Welsh Government were to request that coal tip extraction be included in the government's coal licence ban legislation, Would the Minister consider amending the Coal Industry Act to extend the Mining Remediation Authority's remit to cover those powers, associated responsibilities in the future?
So, Mr Witherden, think about other people, not just yourself, who's got to get questions in, please.
Well, my honourable friend was in a Westminster Hall debate on this issue a few months ago, and what I said then remains the Government's position, which is we work closely with the Welsh Government on this issue. We are content that the Welsh Government's position, which is that this is already regulated, is sufficient, but we obviously keep these things under review.
You, Mr Speaker. Green Gen Cymru was granted an Ofgem licence within days of this Government coming to power. Is the Secretary of State confident in the process that took place? And can he confirm how far it had reached under the previous government?
Again, we have had a meeting to discuss this issue in the past. I'm not going to get into decisions that Ofgem have made here, but any planning applications or further processes that they bring forward will obviously be dealt with by the Government and by Ofgem in the usual means.
Justine Sullivan.
Mr Speaker, as a Labour and Cooperative MP, I'm absolutely delighted with the publication of today's local power plan because I have seen it work in action with local energy projects such as the Bonus Scout Group, which is reducing its bills through 40 solar panels and delivering funding support for young people. What steps will it take to increase accessibility and community capacity to deliver local power plans? And will he join me to visit the Bonus Scouts?
She makes a really important point. Let me congratulate the Scout Group. My honourable friend promises he's going to come and visit on the record in Hansard, and she makes a really important point.
We're a Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The environmental impact assessment for the Rosebank oil field shows its emission would be enormous, equivalent to 70% of the UK's annual total emission. The developer, however, is claiming the environmental impact is not significant. The Minister may not wish to comment on Rosebank specifically, but will he set out clearly how climate and environmental impacts are weighted in decisions of this kind and not written off as insignificant?
The Honourable Lady it won't be disappointed because she said in her own question that I won't comment on the application, but we have set out very clearly in response to the Finch ruling how Scope 3 emissions will be taken into account. That process is now underway and I can't comment on those applications.
Dr. Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The 2025 EU-UK Summit set ambitions for the UK to join the single electricity market. Does the Minister agree with me that close, easier energy interconnection between the EU and the UK constitute a key strategic component to our continent's energy security whilst reducing costs for UK businesses and customers?
I thank my honourable friend for raising this important issue. At the recent North Sea Summit, we committed to a joint ambition of 100 gigawatts of offshore renewable projects with our European neighbours, including through coordinated energy infrastructure planning. We're determined to work closer than ever with our European neighbours to maximise our joint clean energy independence. Strategically planned interconnection and efficient electricity trading are key elements of that plan.
Jim Farron.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week I spent a half-hour talking to a constituent in Windermere who owns a small hotel. Over the last 4 years he's seen his energy bills double. He can only afford to keep going. He doesn't draw any salary whatsoever in the business anymore. Only can afford to keep going because he's drawn down his pension. He carries on because he loves what he does. But this is not sustainable and he's not alone. What will the Secretary of State do to help people like my constituent?
The reason this has happened is because of the fossil fuel crisis that the last government presided over. All I can say to the honourable gentleman is, look, we are doing absolutely everything we can to help his constituents and others. We recognise the scale of the problem and we recognise there's more to be done.
Tony Vaughan.
Speaker, the local workforce desperately needs new nuclear at Brandreth in my constituency of Folkestone High. So does the Secretary of State agree that the way we protect nature and habitats needs to be reformed in the way the Nuclear Regulatory Task Force has recommended, so we protect nature better while also providing the skilled jobs and energy security my constituents deserve?
Well, we do want to improve regulations and processes for new nuclear projects while continuing to protect the environment. We'll present a full government response and an implementation plan by the end of this month, taking into account our national security considerations and environmental considerations.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Much of Dorset is blessed with solid walls, thatched cottages you must visit, including our National Trust villages of Shappick, where last year Slate Cottage sat empty for 2 years because it was £100,000 to bring it up to the minimum energy efficiency. National Trust just couldn't do it. They've now sold it, which is a huge loss to the community. So what will the Minister do to help landlords like National Trust to resolve this problem?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Thank the member for her question. We are working closely with heritage organisations to tackle precisely this question, and you'll see in the Warm Homes Plan there is specific advice around how we retrofit these historic buildings. I will be visiting some projects, not in her constituency, but I'll be visiting some projects soon.
Lord Hatton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Just recently, Moorwind received funding to conduct an important feasibility study for a major offshore wind hub at Portland. If built, the hub would be a key part of the West Country's manufacturing supply chain, and it would create hundreds of well-paid green jobs for local people as well. So will the Minister work with Moorwind and myself to help deliver this hub at pace? And can the Minister come down to Portland to meet the key players and get the ball rolling?
It sounds really exciting, and one of us will visit.
Mr Speaker, I hope the Secretary of State has seen the reports that show that the proposed Rosebank oil field, as well as being a climate catastrophe, risks breaking international law. If approved, Rosebank's profits could flow to Delek Group, a company accused by the UN of supporting illegal Israeli settlements. So if he cannot comment on Rosebank specifically, can he tell me what steps his department is taking to ensure that all UK oil and gas projects respect international law?
Well, of course, all projects that are consented and licensed have to follow law, and the NSTA as a regulator makes that happen. I'm not going to comment on projects that are currently going through the consenting process.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In Blackpool, around 75% of privately rented homes have damp or mould. It's a huge problem in our town, so I was delighted when the Chancellor announced 30 million in the Warm Home Plan. So can the Secretary of State outline to my residents when Blackpool will receive that money and when this plan will finally get underway?
Honourable friend is absolutely right, and what's really, really important is not just the funding that we are providing, but the regulation that we're introducing in the Warm Homes Plan, promised by the last government but never delivered, so that people who are privately renting get the decent, warm, comfortable homes they deserve.
So, Alex Shelby.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I must raise a very important issue with the Secretary of State. There is concern about the thermal runaway in batteries, especially those on prime agricultural land. Heavy metals vaporise at 900 degrees. Thermal runaway burns at over 1,000 degrees. So may I ask the Secretary of State what research and assessment has been done for the evaporation of these heavy metals which would poison agricultural land?
Well, the Honourable Gentleman raises an important point. We take safety incredibly seriously. All the evidence points to the fact that the fire risk from batteries is less than in residential homes, but we obviously take it seriously. I convened a roundtable recently of those involved to look at what more we might do in the regulatory space, and DEFRA is taking forward work looking at environmental regulations on batteries. We obviously take fire safety incredibly seriously.
No law.
Mr Speaker, I welcome the news this morning of Imerys' success in auction round 7, but what steps is the Minister taking as part of the local power plan to ensure that local communities share in the spoils of Cornwall's great renewable energy potential?
Well, if he stays tuned, Mr Speaker, in about an hour's time, he'll be hearing all about it.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many of my constituents of Runcorn and Helsbury are anxious about the consultation process and the environmental impact of the Peak Cluster project in rural Cheshire. Will the Secretary of State commit to meeting with me and local representatives to ensure community concerns are properly addressed before the development consent order is submitted?
Any projects that are going through the planning system, as I've said repeatedly, have to demonstrate community engagement, and they have to demonstrate that they've engaged genuinely with that feedback. That's part of the process, and any projects of any kind are assessed against that. I'm not going to comment on individual applications for obvious reasons.
Mr
Speaker, can I ask what progress is being made on CCUS and hydrogen projects in the Humber?
In a topical question, Mr Speaker, I might struggle to say all of the progress that's been made, but we have committed, both as a government in our energy strategy and in decisions made by the Chancellor, to fund hydrogen and carbon capture to make sure that these are important parts of our energy mix going forward. In the Humber, I'll be visiting soon the projects there to see exactly what's happening on the ground, but we are committed to carbon capture, utilisation and storage and the jobs that go with it.
Wilkinson.
Speaker, Rendesco is a brilliant renewable energy business in my constituency. Just before Christmas, they were awarded a £2 million grant from UKRI. But since then, the phone hasn't been working at UKRI's end. Can ministers have a word to see if this money can be unlocked to ensure that the product that they wish to bring to market can be brought to market and that jobs are not going to be lost?
Yes, if he gives us the details.
Mayor.
Working with our local councillor David Branson, I've been pushing to get more support for our local schools to cut their bills, and I'm really pleased that last year GB Energy funded new solar panels for Sunnyside Academy in Colby Newham. Will ministers meet with me to see if we can get more support from more of our local schools to cut their bills?
Well, congratulations to Sunnyside Academy. It's this government that is delivering, and GB Energy that is delivering, a policy opposed by the party opposite.
Wilson. Oh, sorry. Wilson.
Mr. Speaker. Last week, the government pushed through the imposition of the emissions trading scheme on domestic shipping. This will have a huge impact in Northern Ireland because we bring so many goods in through ferries from GB and back to GB again from Northern Ireland. What impact has the Minister made of the effect of this on consumer prices in Northern Ireland, manufacturing costs, and does he recognise that Northern Ireland will face heavy costs because of this net zero policy?
Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member and I debated this at length in the Delegated Legislation Committee last week, and in terms of the impact of this on Northern Ireland, he'll be pleased to welcome, I'm sure, the fact that we're providing a 50% reduction on the carbon tax associated with the extension to domestic maritime for journeys to Northern Ireland, to ensure that they're not disadvantaged as compared with journeys to the Republic of Ireland.
Kumar. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Teddy Grace in Dudley this year celebrates 200 years in business, with 5 generations of the same family keeping this local sweet shop a mainstay in Dudley. However, as many small businesses, NG Bills are a constant threat to their success. What steps is my right honourable friend taking to ensure Teddy Grace can enjoy another 200 years of sweet success? And will he meet with me to discuss this further?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it was an extremely sweet question, and of course I'll be very happy to meet with her to discuss it further and outline many of the initiatives that the government's taking to support small businesses, and maybe it'd be best to do that on site where I can get my favourite chocolate limes.
Rick Cross.
Mr. Speaker, our government seems stricken, almost delusional, in the face of onrushing disaster, and we are seeing, arguably, the most destructive industrial calamity in our nation's history. Those are the words of G&B Scotland's Secretary about the government's determination to tax and regulate the oil and gas sector out of business. Does the Secretary of State agree with his union friend's words?
I had a very useful meeting in Aberdeen recently at which the GMB participated about building up what the future of the North Sea is, and what I never hear from the party opposite is any support for the industries that will invest in the North Sea in the future and the tens of thousands of jobs that will go with it. Maybe at some point they should support the future in the North Sea.
James Dashman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Secretary of State knows, there is a fantastic site on the edge of the M1 at Ratcliffe-on-Soar, the last of the coal-fired power station sites to be decommissioned, which will make a superb site for clean energy generation. Will the Secretary of State commit to meeting with me and Claire Ward, the Mayor of the East Midlands, to discuss it further?
Well, I visited Ratcliffe-on-Soar for the closure ceremony, and it was a good example, actually, of a just transition done well, but also, of course, a historic moment of actually the consensus delivering the phase-out of coal across our country. I'm very happy to meet with him, and I've met with the Mayor recently to talk about what the future of that site is. It's got huge potential.
Jim Allister, final question.
Returning to the imminent imposition of the emission trading scheme on domestic shipping, why is it that consumers in Northern Ireland are going to face a carbon tax imposition, whereas consumers in Scotland who equally depend on ferries for their supplies are obtaining an exemption? Where's the parity?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government was very pleased to provide an exemption for the islands around Scotland for a number of reasons, and quite particularly because of the very small populations on those islands and the non-competitive nature of the ferry services.
Right, that completes questions. Let the front bench change over.